Welcome to Fed Renaissance. If you're a former federal employee trying to figure out what's next, start a new business, or looking to remake yourself, you're in the right place. There's no need to walk this road alone. So many former feds have already generated their own success, so why not learn from the paths they've already traveled? I'm your host and federal government alum, Cory. Fed Renaissance exists to help make you successful and to support your journey of personal and professional self-discovery. Former feds are a formidable force. Come join the movement. All right. Hey, Elena, thanks for joining us. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can indeed. Hey, everyone. I'm Cory. I am the host of the Fed Renaissance podcast. We are honored today to have Elena Walls join us. Elena is a former employee with the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, who now runs a growing and innovative culinary business. Elena, I was thinking before, we should call this podcast title like From Development to Deliciousness or something. I don't
Love it.
But Elena, thank you so much for being here. We're really glad that you're here.
It's my pleasure.
By now, most folks, I'm sure, know that USAID was eliminated as a government agency in 2025, and that had to be an extraordinary and painful experience for those like yourself that were directly affected. Just to start out, take us back to the moment when you realized that the job that you loved, that you thought you would have probably for a lifetime, was no more, that had to be accompanied by a lot of stress, a lot of questions, maybe same questions faced by other federal employees right now going through something similar. So how did you land on what you wanted to do with your life after USAID?
Yeah, indeed, it was very painful and very traumatic and unexpected because, of course, we all read Project 2025 and we thought that USAID was actually very well positioned to weather the change in administration. We were prepared, we were ready to go with America First. And then, of course, all of this imploded. And you're right. I mean, the stress of suddenly realizing that I'm unemployed or about to be unemployed, having been a civil servant for a while and knowing that, thinking that I had this job for a really long time in the future. I think for me at that time, it was mostly thinking where I can compensate for my family in terms of income. How can I maintain sanity? I think that was really important. And I landed at first on thinking I will just do some consultancies.
Yes.
And it was actually easy because within a few days of the news hitting the media, I received my very first consultancy request. I wrote a report on the impact of USAID withdrawal from the global education sector that was funded by a European Research Institute. And I thought, okay, I can still contribute to the values that USAID espoused, but from new vantage point and see how that goes. And then I did not get any other consultancy. For 2 months, I got nothing. I kept applying and all my friends kept applying. And it was increasingly clear that the sector as we knew it was no more. So at that time, I leaned into what's been my passion in my life before then, which is playing with food, cooking, feeding people. I've always loved it. For 30 years, every day, I've been cooking. And I thought, a lot of my friends who relied on takeouts no longer could afford it. Maybe I can help them by teaching them my skills. What I knew how to do is how to put together a delicious meal really quickly and inexpensively. And then somehow this idea took hold and I started talking to people and everybody said, oh my God, I would totally pay for it. And I was like, oh, I guess that's a business idea.
That's a bit of a hint. Yes.
Exactly. And then it took me maybe about a month to, talk to ChatGPT about the market research and see what's out there. But most importantly, is just to come to terms with the idea that I will need to leave the international development sector and venture into something completely different.
Right.
And it wasn't really that hard, I would say, for me compared maybe to some other people, because even in all organizations I've ever worked in, I was like intrapreneur. I always created something new. I challenged existing rules and ideas. I became
Hmm.
kind of infamous for it a little bit.
A change agent.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not to apply all these skills to something that I really care very deeply about, is
Right,
food and
right.
nutrition.
Well, you bring up something really interesting too, which is idea validation, right? I mean, it's one thing to really want to do something and care about it, but it's another thing to know that there's a market for it, right? And you may have a talent, you may be brilliant at it, but maybe it's something that's just not in vogue, or there may not be a lot of folks interested in it. So tell us a little more, like how did you do that chat GPT research, and what gave you confidence that certainly somebody saying, hey, I would pay for this, that's a good hint, but what gave you a sense of confidence that maybe there was a broader market for this that might actually catch on?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And I think for me, it was that moment in time. I still remember when I asked ChatGPT to research culinary schools around me and cooking lessons. And to be honest with you, for the last, whatever, 10 years when I traveled, in every country I went, I took a cooking class because I always wanted to know about regional cuisine, how people, cook, what spices they use, how they live. I learned a lot. It was super interesting. But here, what ChatGPT gave me is what I have observed personally, is that cooking classes are really an entertainment. It's not a skill building.
Hmm.
And for me, cooking has always been about skills and also about the vocabulary, like the language. I talk about it on my website in the
I just
about
read that
section.
this morning. Yeah, cooking is a language. I love that metaphor. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not even a metaphor if you think about it, because if you're not a proficient cook and you read a recipe and it says saute onions, you have no idea what that means. What's the
Yeah.
difference between sweating, sauteing, caramelizing onions? What
So
does it
saute
mean to
means
brown a
jump in
meat?
French, right? Are we supposed to jump over the onions? I mean, yeah.
Well, exactly. So the point is, what I kind of myself realized is that if you think about cooking as a language, right, that it has the vocabulary, it has um, the understanding of ingredients, the understanding of the process, the equipment, all of that. Nobody ever taught you, you can't really pick it up. You cannot
Mm,
just read a recipe or even watch a video, because a lot of these videos, they skip through basics, right? Right.
okay.
And I thought that in all of these offerings around me, nobody is welcoming people who really need to learn those basics.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
have two of my own kids who I taught how to cook from the very young age. So I thought,
Yeah.
I can apply all of my extensive training experience to the
Yeah.
new content.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really saw a need in the market. You saw a lot of cooking classes that are like, oh, that would be fun. That would be interesting. That would be entertainment. But looking at actually teaching a language, teaching the building blocks of that language so that people could fluently speak the language of cooking for themselves.
Exactly. And I thought as well
Interesting.
that all of them are one off. And I
Okay.
thought there's no way you can teach somebody to cook in like two
Yeah.
hours. There's no
Right.
way. So I sat
Right.
down and I developed a curriculum. I thought, what would be good length? Probably like a month. And I thought I can break down all the fundamental skills and knowledge
Mhm.
that person needs to have, such as like how to hold a knife. What pans do you need to have in your kitchen? How to match cookware to the recipe? How to use leftovers in a creative way, how to minimize waste, all of that stuff. So, like the knowledge I accumulated over many, many, many years of like
Mhm.
just, hobby, how can I condense it in a very short and accessible way for people to learn how to feed themselves really quickly?
Right. Right. So you started out with this curriculum, and there's so much to explore here. One thing that already caught my attention is you said even in your federal, because there are probably a lot of federal employees saying, "Look, I want to venture out." There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, listening right now who are kind of saying, "I'm kind of ready, but I'm scared to jump." And they might be thinking, "I don't know that I'm an entrepreneur." You were saying that in your federal career, you saw yourself already kind of as an entrepreneur. how would you describe yourself and your personality, prior to taking this path, and what even maybe in your federal career helped you as you moved forward?
Two separate questions, right? So in terms of how I see myself, I'm certainly a doer, go-getter, and a problem solver. So I was known at the agency for getting stuff done and tackling really tough issues that people tackled before but weren't successful, and actually getting them resolved, right? So I knew that about myself, that I'm tenacious, and if one way doesn't work, I'll find another way, right? And like multilingual people frequently are known for that, and I'm obviously
Yes.
multilingual. So
Yeah.
so that was one aspect. And how USAID's career prepared me for it. Of course, it's customer service skills, it's project management skills, knowing how to manage your budget, how to think about, timelines and money. And one of the projects I managed was a $40 million research award that operated in 20 countries, right? So it was a massive team that I managed, making sure that on time, on scope, on budget, all those core competencies that we were
Right.
trained on. And I thought, I can apply it here in a very kind of small way,
Okay.
but it almost like easy in comparison, right?
Right. Right.
Compared to what I've done at Aid.
Right. Yeah. Just the scale. I mean, talking about, tens of millions of dollars, that's a big deal. And yet venturing out on your own, having an entire infrastructure around you can also be a comfort. Venturing out on your own can be a totally different animal, as I'm sure you know. What, and there are a lot of folks who probably say, I don't even know what the first step is to take. What was the first few steps, 2 or 3 steps you took to even establish what you call now Food First, right?
Yes.
Food-first.com, I believe, is your website, right?
Yes.
What were
Yes.
those first few steps you took?
Right. So my first step was to write a kind of skeletal business plan and to see if it's going to be financially viable, right? So I created that plan in a basic spreadsheet, thinking, okay, how many classes I can teach, how many students I can accommodate in a single class. Assuming everything else goes great, what would be my maximum comfortable income per year? And am I okay with that number? Because if that number is like 30,000, maybe I'm not okay. I don't even want to go there, right?
Yeah,
But if it is, and I landed at a number of about 2/3 of my prior salary, which I thought, you know what? For teaching 5 days a week, one class a day, effectively I'm working 6 hours a day because class is 2 hours, prep 2 hours, clean up 2 hours. For 2/3 of my old income, that's pretty much, works out.
for a starting point, especially.
Well, I was thinking that eventually, because starting point, of course, all the discounts and you need to fill your classes.
Yeah.
But at least I knew that there is a viability to that, right? So if I managed to sell all these classes, right? So that was the first step, figuring out financial viability of an idea, like given the price point. Now, price point was also.
Did you use AI to help you with that at all, or did you just kind of spreadsheet it on your own?
So business plan was spreadsheeting on my own. The most important thing, I think, was figuring out the price level and my core demographic. Like, who do I want to teach? What can they afford? Because if you think about it, like my initial motivation was to help people who were laid off, right? And they used to take outs because they were busy and well off, and now they're not as busy and not as well off. So how can I help them, and what can they afford to pay? So that's where I talked to a bunch of people, some of them my friends, my kids' friends, students, which was definitely my core demographic. I live right next to American University. So I thought, graduate students or even just students who moved out of housing. And they said, yeah, I'll pay $70 for a class, 75. I was like, okay, that's a good starting point for me to think of, right? But ChatGPT was very helpful in figuring out the logistics of starting the business. Because once I knew financial viability, if everything goes well, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I register a business? What are the existing laws that I need to be aware of, certifications I need to get? And that's where ChatGPT was literally, it took me 5 minutes, just type in question getting the steps, clarifying the question, getting additional steps and links to all the websites that I needed to go and fill up the paperwork. And
Okay.
then with help of ChatGPT, registering took me maybe like 2 hours. It was fast. So I do have a LLC in Washington, D.C. And again, once you talk to ChatGPT about options, it becomes fairly clear under what circumstances you need to have LLC, when you can do with just filing under your social security number, which is sole proprietorship, like without LLC, completely fine if you don't expect anybody will ever sue you, which is fine. But like I have
Right.
people who come to my home and use very sharp knives. So I
Right.
figured
Sure.
that some protection
You're
is
heating things
necessary.
up on a stove. It makes sense to have some protection. Yes.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But again, I
Yeah.
think that modern AI tools make registration so easy. And again, like even the question you asked, where registered? There's
Right.
just a lot
Right.
of misconceptions out there that, oh, register in
Sure.
Delaware. No, don't.
Yeah.
Register the place of residence. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, and honestly, out of curiosity, I mean, there will be a lot in the audience that live in the sort of Delmarva area or the National Capital Region. You're in DC proper. If somebody was interested, out of curiosity, in using your talents to have a cooking class in Virginia, could you do that, or does that limit you to just providing services in DC proper?
I can do it on one-off basis. If I were to set up a separate location in Virginia as a routine, then I would need to do additional registration. But the law does allow me to do occasional, like provided occasional services, like for instance, birthday parties that I periodically support with the cooking
Okay.
experience. I can certainly do that.
Gotcha, gotcha. So at this point, you've got a business plan, you've got an LLC, you're ready to go. You open the doors, you're ready.
Yes. And then I start making all
Oh,
sorts
you
of
truly are.
mistakes.
So nothing else.
I started making all sorts of mistakes. I was thinking to myself, I need to have business cards. I need to have brochures. So I went ahead and I spent like time on Canva designing all my beautiful fancy brochures and designing business cards and ordering all of that stuff and paying money for this. That was like, don't ever pay money for something that you don't absolutely need to have. This is like a rule number one, I think, of small business ownership. So
Good lesson learned.
I
Yeah.
know exactly. So for me, those brochures only helped with one thing. When I tried taking them to local businesses to place them in places, it was helpful to know that people were very excited about this when they saw the brochures. But then I realized that nobody ever else is going to see them probably.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Okay.
because these days, I think what I learned after a few months of doing this is that people are online. They pay attention to
Hmm.
things that come to them online. Nobody ever checks message boards anymore, or very few
Yeah.
people do. And it's just like all these brochures end up sitting in my that drawer, and I don't really need them. Same
Right.
fate
Right.
was with business cards. These days, you
Okay.
can just go on. There are apps on the phone that you can download for free and put your business
Hmm.
cards on the phone. Nobody wants to use paper business
The
cards
paper.
anymore.
Yeah. Everybody just loses them these days. Totally.
I know.
Yeah.
I have like 500 of them, and I'm like, why the hell did I pay $50 for it? I don't know.
Right. Right. Totally. Totally. So
Yes.
so this is all happening before you've even had anybody in class.
Correct, because I felt very strongly that I needed to have everything ready, my website, my curriculum, all of my materials in place, and a clear plan how I'm going to find clients.
Yes.
So
And
with the
and are you saying that you agree with that you really did need to have those things in place and you would advise others to do that?
I actually do, because I feel
Okay.
like once you hit the ground running, like in my case, what happened was, so I developed the curriculum, I developed the website. The website, by the way, people do not pay to help you develop website unless you're truly technology like a hater, because
Yeah.
AI makes it so easy.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, not worth paying a ton of money for something that you can do yourself with AI's help
Right.
quite easily.
Right.
And more importantly, I took this webinar recently that made me think about it in a completely different way. What the webinar was talking about, how in 5 years, nobody will ever go to websites anymore, or possibly
Oh,
even in
interesting.
three, because people will be just asking AI for whatever information they need. AI will be providing that information based on AI's perusal of the websites, which means
Interesting.
that we need to increasingly pivot toward from designing websites for customers to designing websites for AI scouring
AI
for information.
consumption. No,
Exactly.
totally makes sense. And so for folks that do need to start a website, did you do that completely through AI, or were there any products that helped you do that and made it easy?
So I asked ChatGPT to help select which platform to use, because I already
Okay.
designed my own website for consultancies with WordPress, again, per AI
Okay.
recommendation. I wasn't happy with WordPress for kind of a customer service oriented business. It's fine for like static information, but it's not something that you could use for my business. So AI recommended Squarespace and gave explanation why, and I thought it was compelling. I was like, okay. And then frankly, because I've been a fan of photographing my food forever, you know,
Okay.
it was super easy for me to find the photos and develop actual layout. I'm pretty good with visuals. I've always been good with visualization as part of my research background. So that was super fun, actually. I really enjoyed doing that. And again, AI makes these things so easy. It's all embedded
Right.
tools. You just drag and drop, basically.
Right. Right. So I imagine now you have your website up, you have your LLC registered, you've got and you said you already kind of had a bit of a curriculum, am I right? That you already
I
stood
have
that up.
developed full curriculum
Yeah.
upfront, because I thought
Yeah.
that what if I post or I start advertising and suddenly I have all the signups right away.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was actually, for a while, I was in that uncertain space because I really wanted to make sure everything was tip top ready to go before I started advertising. But then a friend of mine said, look, you may never be ready. You should just advertise, see what happens. Maybe start small, see if a couple of friends sign up, give them huge discounts so you could test drive it. And I was like,
Sure.
this is such a good idea. Let me do it. So I reached out to my friends. I didn't advertise. I just kind of blasted among my friend group, like, hey, I'm going to
Okay.
offer this curriculum. And immediately two people signed up, and
Interesting.
they even
Okay.
paid money. And I was like, wow, this is so great. And that was an incredibly valuable experience, actually, teaching
Right.
for the first time to people that I felt like safe
Yeah,
making
sure.
mistakes and not really, knowing what I was doing, and time-wise in particular, trying to stick to the timeline of the class. So
Right.
once I taught that very first time that my curriculum, of course, I knew what to revise. I also knew that it was solid. I knew that fundamentally it worked, which
Right.
was amazing. I was so
Well,
happy.
you bring up a really good point too, that I mean, especially for folks that are venturing out for the very first time on their own, that having a bit of a test bed with trusted clients in a way, or trusted testers that are going to provide constructive feedback, is probably a really good thing. Um, and when you mention advertising, I was wondering too, because you can end up with, maybe a good problem or an unexpected problem of getting too much interest that you're not ready for. So to start out, you just went to your peer group. Is that right? Just kind of email text?
Exactly. And I think that was really right way to approach this, because
Okay.
it's very stressful when people pay you, and it's not organizations, people pay out of their own money, right? If you're
Right.
not really sure what you're doing. So I feel like having a test run with your peer group, with friends, it's super, super helpful. But
Mm.
what I also wanted to add here, I see a lot of people stumbling making that transition from friends to strangers, right? And what I think is important is to test those waters early, right?
Mm.
Before you go full in, is trying to see, will I have interest for my business? Will there be demand? And how do you do that, right? So I think it's really hard. So for me, I think what really helped me is going to different places, talking to people just randomly. I went to restaurants, nearby cafes, talking to friends of friends, people who I personally did not know, but who were connected to me. And I would ask them very honestly, saying, here's what I'm offering. Do you think people will pay? Will you pay for this?
Yeah.
And people were saying, yeah, I would actually. And they would say, will you offer gluten-free baking, for example? Or will you be offering a birthday party? And I would like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
But
And
that
what
gave me
and
confidence.
yes. And these are with folks that you didn't know as well.
Correct. I did not know at
Members of
all.
the
They were
public.
complete strangers. Yes.
Yeah. Important point. So at this point now, you've and there is still a step I'm curious about, even with this peer group. How do you accept payment? People show up and they just throw cash at you? Probably not. How did you handle that?
So, excellent question. That's one of the questions I asked ChatGPT early on when I was
Okay.
selecting the website, right? So I
Yeah.
said, I imagine the whole thing, what it's going to look like when my school is functional, when it works, when students are coming. And I thought right away, well, I'm going to have a way how I can manage scheduling and payments. So when I was selecting the website, I outlined my business in pretty significant detail, asking ChatGPT to recommend a website that comes with integrated scheduling and payment services. So
Okay.
that's one of the reasons why I picked Squarespace, because Squarespace does have that add-on. You pay for it
Interesting.
separately. It's called Acuity scheduling function. And it's linked directly to Stripe, which is, everybody knows Stripe. It's a
Sure.
payment option. So from that perspective, it was easy. The harder part was banking. A lot of
Interesting.
people
Okay.
still think that they need to have banking face to face. I don't think it's necessary. Again, I asked ChatGPT to research and recommend the best banking option for my school specifically. I describe what I
Okay.
do.
And for your
Actually,
LLC, right? Am I correct?
correct. Yes, for my LLC.
Yeah.
Great thing about working with ChatGPT is that it remembers what you asked before. So I didn't have
Yeah.
to repeat myself. It just would say, oh, yeah, for your culinary school, this is what I recommend. And then what I did, I also triangulated, of course, the data.
Yeah.
So I did a
Sure.
separate Google search asking, like, okay, what are the best, what's the best, most reliable and the cheapest banking for small
Right.
business? And they kind of coincided, right? So they
Okay.
were pulling from the same information, same source, which was Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and there were a couple of other reliable, old-fashioned institutions that recommended my bank, called Found Bank, as the best option for small businesses.
Gotcha. You
And
said
once
found bank, like
it's
lost and
called,
found?
yes, exactly, that's what it's called,
Okay.
Found Bank.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
online only, but it's a proper bank. It's not financial instrument, it's a bank. And it's truly been remarkable how wonderful it is. It's made my finances so much easier. It tracks all my taxes. It does everything for me, and it's free, which is
Wow.
incredible.
Oh,
You
interesting.
pay for additional services. You pay when you wanted to pay your taxes, for example, instead of
Right. Right.
CPA. But again, for CPA, you pay like what, $250 an hour. Here, you pay $20, and it does it for you. So
Wow. Yeah.
I think that in starting a small business, money is really important. And I see a lot of people in my immediate kind of a acquaintance sphere who started businesses who come to this with this notion that upfront investment is necessary. And I think it's only true to an extent. I think that some upfront investment, like for instance, payments for, your website, clearly is necessary. But I think a lot of people go too fast on terms of spending before they start bringing money in. And I think it's a mistake. I think that no matter how enamored we are with our own ideas, we can fail. And it's like every time I run a new cycle of classes, I'm prepared that I will not have any signups. And I'm thinking, what's my plan B? What's my plan C? So I think that not spending money until you are comfortable and earn the money to spend is really important. So
Right.
yeah, so that's why I was
And
thinking free.
I love the fact that you're also emphasizing that it can be done with today's tools, that you can bootstrap this and presumably, I mean, usually I don't use chat. I use other AI tools. I haven't used Chat GPT that much, but I assume there's a paid version of Chat GPT.
I'm actually paying for it. It's $20 a month, and I
So
think
you are paying for it. Okay.
it's worth every
Yeah.
penny. So that's the thing. I
Interesting.
think that you need to think strategically where you're willing to spend your money. And
Right.
some things, like, for example, I'm not willing to spend money for services where I feel like I can do it myself, right? Like,
Yes.
again, website design.
I've had the same thing with like logo design and things like that. It's like you get to a certain level, you need a branding kit where everything is matching and integrating. But like to start out, you can do so much,
Exactly.
if you're just innovative and resourceful, like you said.
Exactly. I think being innovative, being resourceful, and thinking that fundamentally, not that many people care how phenomenal your logo is, frankly. Like,
So
I got my
true.
logo
Yeah.
for free. You go to logo.com, they give you 7 iterations for free. So I
Right.
got it within
Right.
my 7, and that was done. I have
Right.
my logo.
Same here, by the way,
Here you go. Yeah.
yeah, totally. No, that's really good to know. All right, so just kind of thinking these logical steps that you've gone through, you're now ready to accept payment. You've got folks that are ready to pay. Now they're kind of now to scheduling and sending invites. Are you doing that also through your website?
Yes. So yes, and
Okay.
the one immediate trap that I think a lot of
Yeah.
people probably falling in, as soon as you register, you start getting bombarded with basically people who want your money. Yelp of the world, whole bunch of different banks. I receive ton of mail constantly saying, "Oh, we have this thing that we're sure you need." I'm like, "Nope, I have to pay for it. I don't need it."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
being very disciplined about it, I think is really important. Like, I talked to some people who are successful in DC in terms of in the small business setting, and I was like, "How do you advertise?" Because at that point, I received multiple requests for my money for
Right.
advertisement. And they were like,
Yeah.
no, 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 don't do that. Nobody pays attention to ads anymore. What you need to do is flex your networks and flex all the community services that you can lay your hands on.
So word of mouth.
Word of mouth. And it really
Yeah.
took me no time at all sitting down, thinking strategically, okay, what are the neighborhoods that are closest to me? And then Googling the listservs for those neighborhoods, and then simply posting on those listservs. And I only got rejection from one that said, hey, that looks like advertisement. You need to pay us $50. But $50 was nothing compared to Yelp, who wanted 500, you know?
Wow. Now you're saying listserv. Are you talking listservs or like Facebook groups?
No, it's listservs, community listservs where people like share news like, oh, there's like lost dog, or
Okay.
here's the babysitting services. So those
Right.
kind of listservs, these are the ones people actually use and pay attention
Interesting.
to. Yep.
Okay.
And pretty
Okay.
much all the clients that I got, which at this point, probably 60 or 70, and I've been like, 4 months in the business, all came from listservs, and some that I posted, most that I asked my friends to post. I just said, you live in
Okay.
this neighborhood. Can you please post this text on your listserv?
Right.
And they
Right.
did that. And the next day I had 5 people signing up.
That's amazing. So now you've moved from your peer group to folks you've never met.
Exactly.
And knowing you, Elena, you've now purchased a massive building for your culinary school, and you're going to invite everybody to this beautiful building that you've purchased for day one. Is that what happened, or what really happened?
What happened was I have had a passion project 3 years ago when I renovated my kitchen completely as a hobby because I love cooking. And I
And you did it
installed,
yourself?
yep, my husband and I, we
No
did it
way.
ourselves from scratch.
Awesome.
We gutted the kitchen, inclusive of floors and everything and walls. And we
Love
rebuilt
it.
it from scratch ourselves. And it's my dream kitchen. It's perfect. And I have
Okay.
8 burner stove with 2 ovens, and it's
Oh my
perfect.
goodness.
I know. So
Wow.
it was
So you
it
do
was
have a
ready
lot
to
of fire
go.
going on. Yeah. I got to ask,
Exactly.
gas or electric?
Gas, only gas.
Gas. Only gas, right? That's the
Yep,
way to go.
that's the way to go.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes,
All right.
exactly.
Uh-huh. So you've got this amazing kitchen, and you're inviting people to this kitchen, to your
That's
house?
right. That's right. People come to my house. I'm luckily pretty central. I'm next to American University, which is,
Okay.
it's a nice neighborhood. There's plenty of parking. So it's nice because it's not too far from like DC center, right? It's like 15-minute drive, but at the same time, it's residential enough that, my students do not run into parking issue. Say compared if I were living somewhere near DuPont Circle, right? So that would be much
Right,
harder.
right,
So yeah,
right.
so the people come. I have a little sign that I'm actually planning on turning into a permanent sign, and they come into my house and we work together on the food. It's great.
Wow, that is so neat. It reminds me briefly, we took a trip to Israel in June, and met with the head of the market in Jerusalem, who does something so similar to you. But you do this tour of the market in Jerusalem. You're just, smelling the spices and tasting samples of all these, amazing local produce and products. And then you go to her house. She has a bit of a studio kitchen, and then cook with her. And it was so similar. It just, and it was such a homey, nice feel that it just felt so organic, not to be, pun intended, I guess.
And
Yeah.
it's actually interesting that you said that because
Yeah.
my house is not that large. It's like 2,000 square feet, So
Uh-huh.
like a run-of-the-mill, detached house in DC Northwest, not too big, not too small. And I felt very self-conscious that I didn't have like massive spread, like with the counters, like a big island. Didn't have any of that. It's just a galley kitchen and attached dining room, which is pretty modest in size. And at some point, I mentioned that to my students, and they were like, no, this is actually great because it's great to have this learning experience in the context that we can relate to. Because if you had that massive setup, like professional school, then it would be so much harder for people to relate because they
Oh,
were like,
wow.
yeah, sure, you can cook in this massive kitchen, but how are you going to do it at home, right? But they
Right.
see
Yeah, it's
how
easy.
I
It's easy if you're
manage.
a billionaire, sure. Yeah.
Exactly, but they see how I
Yeah.
manage it in my very kind of small and very familiar looking kind of space, right? In the
Hmm.
context of a galley kitchen, how I set up my spices, how I set up all my pots and pans. And people
Right.
like, oh yeah, I can learn from that. I can take that home and reorganize my own space. So I've been also advising my students how to be much more efficient with their kitchen setup, because the flow is important. The flow is what helps you move through your cooking process easily and without stress. And it's really critical, I think.
I love that because then it is so relatable, and it's like, oh, okay, I've been wondering how to do this, all my life, and how to, organize these things and what order to do things, how to be more efficient. We're all incredibly busy. And to do it in a sort of a normal kitchen makes a ton of sense. Logistically, that makes total sense, and how you would manage that, and I could see the appeal of that. At the same time, you're inviting folks into your house. I mean, how does your family feel about strangers showing up and coming to the house and hijacking your kitchen and all that good stuff?
Right. It's a good question. I think my family has been so far unbelievably supportive and very understanding and really trying to like make sure they grab a bite of food like half hour before my class starts, right? So they don't have to interrupt. My dog, however, is much less understanding and totally not supportive. He hates the fact that he needs to be in prison, in jail,
Oh my
of
goodness.
my
Yeah,
kid's room or my husband's office, during the
that's where my
classes.
dogs are during the podcast right now. So
I
totally
know
understand.
exactly. Yeah, he hates that
Right.
he hears people coming and he cannot welcome them, and he's very upset.
Oh my
But
goodness.
the family is fine. The one thing I should say though, it's been funny because one of the reasons why I felt very strongly about making my culinary school in person and not online, because actually the immediate default assumption people have when I say I have a culinary school is that it is online. Like, no, 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 it is in person. And I felt strongly that education process is best done in person because there's this intangible something about personal connection that really helps you. It's not even so much as like, of course, correcting people grip on the knife you can only do in person, but it's more than that. It's something about that energy that is generated when you sit around the table and you talk and you chop and you stir and you smell and you hear this sizzle of the onion or, other foods. It's completely
I'm getting
different.
hungry. I gotta confess now. I mean, I really am.
So what I was going to say is that sense of building, that idea of building community around food, because food is one thing that is not controversial. It's not politics,
Yeah.
it's not religion, it's not even like climate or anything. It's everybody needs to eat, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
to me, like this idea of building community around food and enjoyment of food is just really quite central to my school. And it turned out to be, just to share with you, much more popular than I thought it would be. People literally don't leave. Like at the 2 hour mark, when we're done with the class, people are just eating and talking. And sometimes I have to kick them out an hour later because they're still like here, happy, talking and chatting. And my family is texting me like, "Hey, are you done? I'm hungry. Need to come down."
It sounds like a good problem to have at some level. I mean, you have to achieve some balance there, obviously, but yeah,
That's right.
I could see that. And so now, I mean, I'm sure, like, I'm certainly curious. Who are these folks that are showing up? I mean, you've got all these new faces, new personalities. What kind of folks are showing up? What walks of life are you seeing?
It's an excellent question that any new entrepreneur should ask themselves. Who is my target audience?
Yeah.
And like with probably most other entrepreneurs, I turned out to be quite wrong about my intended audience. Initially,
Interesting.
I was thinking initially that it's mostly going to be like young professionals or students who just who happen to have grown up in families where parents were very busy, so they didn't cook, they didn't teach them how to cook. And that certainly is a part of my demographic. But what I found interesting is that I don't actually have specific age or gender. I have my youngest students are like 9.
Oh,
My
wow.
oldest students are like 75, and I have everybody in the middle. So
Interesting.
I do get a lot of students and young professionals, but I also get moms and dads of young children, like primary school, who just realize that they really do need to pay attention to nutrition. They need to teach their kids, and they realize they don't have enough skills. So they come to
Right.
learn. I have a lot of retirees who are saying that I've never cooked in my life, never needed to, never had the time, but now why not? I want to try.
Yeah.
So that probably half of my clientele, or just under half, is retirees.
Okay, so you've got customers from all walks of life, from age 9 to age 75, recent retirees. And so what's happening there in the kitchen? Is everybody sort of reticent to engage, or what kind of how do you break the ice, so to speak?
You know, Never had a problem with that, because people come, they're really genuinely curious, they want to learn. And I realized that actually was a significant difference compared to how I used to teach at USAID. USAID training was part of my job. I trained people a lot on content of research monitoring and evaluation. And frankly, a lot of times people weren't that excited to be there. They kind of sort of knew they had to, but they were like on their phones, concurrently, like I'm speaking, and they're like, I see they're somewhere else.
Right.
Here, people come, they're here. No
Nice.
phones.
Nice.
Because they just paid money. They paid their own money. They want to learn. And I feel like it's upon me to make sure that experience is as enjoyable and informative as I can. And that's why, like, when I first started, I've been scripting all my classes. It's full curriculum. It's not just, this is the recipes we're going to learn. No. Why are we learning these recipes? Which skills are we practicing? What vocabulary are we practicing?
Right.
And how
Right.
do I use every question as a teachable moment, right?
Right.
So it hasn't been an issue at all, I think, in terms of making sure that people are present and learning.
Right.
And that's
Because they're
been
vested.
pleasant for
Yeah.
me. Exactly. That's
Right.
been very,
Right.
very pleasant and very gratifying to see the learning happening, to see
Right.
like aha moments, like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I've been doing this wrong my whole life. Like, we usually start my beginner course, we start with knife skills, because
Right.
it's like foundational, right?
Okay.
And some people like, yeah, I admit I have no idea like which side of onion is what, no idea how to hold a knife.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's fine. That's where
Yeah.
I'm here. So I teach them how to do that. Other people come in, they
Yeah.
say, I've got this, like teach me other things. I'm like, okay, let's see. And then they start chopping and I
Yeah.
realize they haven't gotten it. And so they're like,
Right.
oh, so that's why it was so hard for me because I wasn't doing it correctly, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, I think for me, all my training experience from USAID is super handy because it's like meeting the learners where they are skill wise,
Right.
assessing their
Right.
skills in a way that's not obtrusive, and I'm just observing how they do it and I'm gently correcting and redirecting,
Right.
and that's been, for me, it's fun. I love doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And something that you've said is also really interesting to me, that you were wrong about who you thought your customers would be. You were wrong about brochures and business cards. And I want to shift a little bit to managing risk because, and I want to be transparent on my side too. I mean, hey, this is a new podcast. Before you and I were here, we just had to splice a few seconds ago. We had some audio visual things. Things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. But for folks, in the federal mindset specifically, the federal government is very risk averse. You play things very safe. Those of you listening may have chosen your federal career because you wanted safety and security, only to have your agency eliminated, which, may have happened and may not have happened. But for somebody who's risk averse, how would you advise them to approach things? Because what I'm hearing from you is you did a fair amount of planning up front, but you didn't have everything fully planned out. This podcast, you and I agreed that we were going to wing some of this conversation. Yes, I had a series of like 20 or 30 questions that I sent you, but we've answered those without me even looking at them. How do you balance between trying to have everything perfect before you launch and just diving in and figuring it out?
I think it's a good question. And honestly, I think everybody will find their own answer. What I find that for me was helpful is to have plan A, plan B, plan C. And honestly, culinary school for me was plan B. My plan A was, I thought, honestly, my consultancy business is going to work, and then it didn't. And then the school picked up, and I suddenly found myself that, oh, well, I guess I can spend full time doing that,
Yeah.
And actually now I'm faced with this reality that my school can absorb all the time I can give it. So I actually am considering closing my consultancy business altogether and just focusing on school. But I think this idea of having plans, like options, what you're
Yeah.
going to do if things do not pan out how you think they would, I think is really important. However, I would also premise it with saying business does require full commitment. And if you can't give it you all, you are probably setting yourself up for failure. And I learned that kind of a bit the hard way because I was trying to manage both businesses that I had to the point of burnout and starting to make mistakes. And when I did not deliver either well enough because I was working like burning, proverbial candle from both ends. It was too much. So at this point, I'm like, how do I manage my time and my well-being with a single goal in mind of like making my school succeed? And I'm still working toward that because I still have one more consultancy that I agreed to. But after that, I already decided that I'm going to pause and just focus on the school. And the reason why I'm saying is because I see other businesses where people try to do something and it doesn't right away work. And they're like, okay, it's not going to work. I'm going to just stop.
Yeah.
And they do. And maybe it's right decision, or maybe it's simply that they did not have an opportunity to devote their entire energy, their creativity, their bandwidth to this one thing. Because what I think happens all the time is that when you start on it, you realize, like we just discussed, that you got things wrong, which means you need to try again with a different approach,
Right. So what's interesting too in in the government domain, for folks that are transitioning out, folks that have government jobs tend to stay there a long time. You don't find folks that hop around. They're usually there 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years even. Um, and so if they're leaving government, they may be asking themselves, well, all I know is government. That has been my career. Therefore, my logical business step is consultancy around my government career. And as you noted, the market could very well be changing, and that may not be the wisest move. It could be tapping into some other part of yourself. And I've actually recorded the intro podcast already to that precedes this one, which is really talking about the fact that whatever caused you to obtain your government job or to achieve things you've achieved in life, that comes innately from within you already. And we're very complex creatures. So what would you say to somebody who says, okay, consultancy may not work out for me or be working out. It may not be something in my government job. How would you advise them to reach within to discover what may really motivate or energize them on the business front to start something entirely new in a totally different area?
And I think everybody will have their own journey and their own answer to that question, to be honest with you. I was lucky enough that I did have marketable skill that I just developed concurrently with my government skills. And the fact that I can easily see the linkages, I can see which skills I'm using daily, right? That I honed during my government career and I'm applying now daily. But I think it will depend on the type of business, and it will depend on people's own entrepreneurial skills, and it's a personality issue. Like for me, challenge excites me. If I don't have a challenge, I'm bored.
Same.
And
yeah, totally.
Exactly. So for me, like with the government, that's why I was such a disruptor always, because I always looked for something exciting, something different. Simply, chugging along business as usual, this is just not me. And I think not every personality is cut out to be an entrepreneur. You kind of have to be comfortable in that, place of challenge, place of uncertainty, place of unknown. And to me personally, I find it exciting.
Yeah.
So to me, like when I had my civil service job, which I did love, I loved the team, I loved the content, but part of me was very bored knowing exactly what my days are going to look like 12 months from now.
Yeah.
It was kind of sad. But now I have no idea, because it can evolve so many different ways, and I can do whatever the heck I want with this, and it's all up to me. I find it very, very exciting.
Yeah. No, that was one of my questions really, is what is your biggest mindset shift from, the stable government job into the uncertainty of entrepreneurship? Some folks it might scare, but it sounds like to you it's actually exciting because you get to chart your own way.
100%. It is exciting. I like not knowing things. Many people find it very stressful, again, coming from the government, right? And government certainty is everything. But if you are the type of person who really thrives in that space of uncertainty and ambiguity, and who is willing and able to take charge of that uncertainty and ambiguity and chart the course that's new and just yours, I think entrepreneurship might be for you.
Interesting. So transitioning to something really on the brass tacks practical side, we had gotten to the point now you've got a bustling kitchen, a lot of new faces. They've paid you good money. You've cleaned up the kitchen now. Your family has the run of the house again, and they're all happy. They're not texting you anymore. Maybe even your dog's happy at this point. But now you've got money in your account. How have you had to manage finances? Are you doing all this on a spreadsheet? How have you navigated the world of taxes and those kind of learning curves? What's that look like for you?
super stressful actually, because
Okay.
tax season is coming up. I received another threatening email from like DC tax authorities saying like,
Oh,
you did not submit the form.
oh
And I'm
no.
like, but I don't owe you anything. They're like, nope,
Those
you still need to
government
submit the form.
people, Elena, those government people, I'm telling
I
you.
know, right? Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think that again, everybody manages it the way how they see fit. Most people would just hire CPA, which I think I might. But again, I'm very conservative when it comes to money. I always prefer
Hmm.
to do things myself and not pay when I don't have to. What I
Sure.
found is that pretty much any jurisdiction has a free kind of advice line that you
Hmm.
can call and say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. Here's a form I'm supposed to submit. I'm not sure what to do about it. And they will walk you through it. And I
Okay.
took advantage of that in DC multiple times when I would call in this very busy people or people who are bored with people like me who call and don't know anything about taxes.
Sure.
But they take the time to explain. Also, what I found is that there is just so many resources out there. There is SCORE organization. There are national, there are regional, and there are state-specific support organizations that um, really designed to help, particularly starting entrepreneurs,
Okay.
right? So free resources are there. You just
Yeah.
need to tap into them, know what questions to ask, and then, take it from there. I think it's doable. But I am using spreadsheets and I
Okay.
am using my phenomenal bank. I just love
Okay.
it because it sets aside money for taxes. It tracks my
Right.
income. It does everything for me automatically. I don't have to worry about it, which is
That's
great.
so neat. That is so neat. And looping back a little bit on a financial question in terms of how you funded this, what I'm hearing is you did not go out and get a big business bank loan.
Correct. I think in general, getting loans is hard.
Okay.
I'm helping some of my fellow entrepreneurs to kind of set up a system specifically for former feds and fed adjacent folks to help with
Yeah.
loans. I
Right.
personally didn't need it because again, I operate out of my own kitchen and my investments were pretty limited. I needed to buy like a few sets of knives, some aprons, some chopping boards, but that's pretty much it. Right. So for me, my capital investments were minimal, they're very, very
Right.
small. Most of my expenses are operational costs, such as paying for Google,
Right.
account that's professional, paying for my website services, my scheduling software,
Right.
Canva, things like that.
Sure.
But it's like less than $200 a month, frankly, operational costs. So I'm happy with that. I think it's
Right.
fine.
And paying a few $100s on those things that you're getting immediate benefit from, as opposed to paying interest on a loan, that's probably a good feeling by comparison, I would imagine.
100%. In general,
Yeah.
I think that if you can afford taking loans, avoid taking loans,
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you must take loans, at least separate your personal assets
Right.
from the
Right.
loans that you take. Because I think the worst thing that can happen is that if you jump into feet, you empty your savings, you put your house on the line, and then things don't pan out. Because
Right.
sometimes the idea can be brilliant, but it's just maybe wrong place, wrong time, you know?
Totally.
And you just never know how it's going to work out. Like, again, I've been happy so far with my business, but maybe as people in our region continue losing jobs, maybe it also will take nosedive. I just don't know.
Yeah. You never know these days. I mean, I'm sure you didn't see the USAID thing coming. I mean, that just,
Exactly.
you don't know. I'm going to ask, because I know you're a data research evidence person, I'm going to ask you a data question, and then we'll kind of get into wrapping up and summarizing and that sort of thing. Data is important. How do you measure success? Are you collecting data, Elena, to know if you're moving in the right direction? What are your metrics? What are you looking at?
Love that question. Key performance indicators, those key
There you go.
KPIs,
KPIs.
right?
KPIs, folks.
Exactly. Well, I have at some point, it was actually super valuable for me. I sat down with myself. I spent like an hour doing the visioning exercise for myself. Like basically I planned out my business expansion and growth for the next 5 years, focusing on like strategic pivots that I'm planning on taking and KPIs associated with which of them. So of course, income is like number one. Percentage returning customers is another one. It's not like I have goal necessarily, but like
Okay.
I want to make sure I have solid percentage. And also factoring in for growth, recognizing that if I am successful, every iteration of classes, and I do them in chunks, right? So I had like summer schedule, fall schedule, winter schedule. Right now I'm about to enter winter schedule. So after each iteration, I'm assessing how many clients I have had, how many of them are coming back. I have signups for my newsletter that has been growing. I started with 8 people. I have now like 90. So it's been growing pretty rapidly. I see my social media growth as well, like in terms
Okay.
of followers. But it's
Right.
less important to me because social media is kind of sort of global and my business
Right.
is hyper local. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that folks need to think about when they consider their business. Is it going to be local? Is it going to be global? Because your outreach, your marketing strategy is going to vary very
Right.
significantly. Like some of my friends who started businesses that are kind of global in nature, right? Their chief way of getting customers is through social media. So, of course, they need to budget time and energy for content creation that will help them generate business online.
Sure.
For me, that's very different. I create content that's delivered in person. So for me, online is like a cherry on top, social media, just to give more credibility, I guess.
Right.
So again, this is something that I think very business specific.
Right. Right. Um, and we'll get to social media a little bit more in a second. Kind of kind of summing up what we've talked about a little bit. I'll start more on a negative going to a positive. Not even a negative, because there are mistakes. Folks that are just starting out, it's like it's how you learn. So what would be your biggest lesson learned, the thing you wish you would have done differently in starting out? And then what's the biggest thing you're like, man, I'm proud of myself. I really nailed that. I did a good job.
Oh my goodness. I think the only mistake I made is thinking I can run concurrently two businesses.
Mm,
I can't. I literally burnt out hard.
okay.
It was just too much. Another mistake I think is to think that content I deliver for the first time is going to be flawless. And of course, I know it won't be, but I kind of like want to think like I got this.
Sure.
And I tripped a couple of times, and it's a learning experience. If you work with people, you just say, "Hey, sorry, I forgot about mushrooms in this particular dish. Don't forget when you do it at home.
Right.
Do as I say, not as I do." So you kind of start joking, and people
Right.
people understand they're human. They're like,
Right.
"Sure, it's
Right.
fine." And I find that also one thing that I never thought about was the difference between just cooking myself and teaching cooking, because when you teach, you focus on the person. You no
Yeah.
longer focus on the process. And
Yeah.
that has been hard in terms of like making sure I don't forget those mushrooms, whatever needs to go.
Right. Right.
But pretty much the idea I think I nailed, because I'm filling in the niche that just nobody else does. And
Yeah.
I think this is really great. I have a lot of ideas for expansion, and just trying to figure out who to partner with, how to find time to actually put in reality and all my ideas. I just got back from Italy and I
Yeah.
took some Italian cooking classes. So now I'm going to be adding like fresh pasta and Italian regional classes,
I'm getting
which
hungrier. I'm telling
very
you, I
excited
feel it
about.
already. Oh my goodness. That sounds amazing. All right. I'll be right over. Um, that's amazing. Okay. So for the person who is just, they want to make the leap, uh, what's the biggest piece of advice you could give them right now if they're thinking about jumping into entrepreneurship, starting their own thing?
I would just say spend as little money as you can. Try to do it yourself as much as you can, and make sure that you validate your business idea with actual people who are willing to pay. Because I think idea can be great. People may all agree that this is very needed, but if they're not willing to open their purse, how do you know anybody else will be?
Right. Right. Good advice. Good advice for sure. Uh, and I love the fact that you've taken advantage of modern tools to do that too, because they're right there at your disposal, largely for free. And as you mentioned, some of them may be worth paying for. It's a very modest investment in most cases to pay for some of those tools to get some very, very valuable information. Um, this has been fascinating, Elena. I can't thank you enough. Um, Thanks for the just taking the time to talk to us. Where can we find you on the web or on social media? Wanted to get back to that. Are you on all the platforms, all the places? Tell us more. How do we find you?
Yes, I'm on all platforms. The school is called Food First as one word, although the website is with hyphen because one word was already taken. So Food
Yeah,
First Culinary School, as in one word, is on Instagram, and you can find me online, www.food-first.com. And sign up, come join me, or sign up for newsletters if you're not in DC, because I send free recipes twice a month that are easy to implement, and advice, cooking advice, all sorts of tips and tricks.
that's awesome. There's so much to take advantage of. Again, folks, that is food-first.com for the website, and then Food First at Instagram and the various other platforms. Elena, thank you so very much for joining us. Can't thank you enough for being with Fed Renaissance today, and we wish you the very best in your future endeavors.
It has been absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Take care.
All right. Bye.